So we've seen how the power to appoint a chief minister can be controversial, especially in those tense-hung assembly situations. What about reserving bills for the president? I bet that's led to some heated moments between state and central governments, especially when they're run by different parties.
Oh, absolutely. That power to reserve bills has often been a point of friction between the center and the states, especially when their ideologies or political agendas clash. One example that springs to mind is the whole NEET bill situation in Tamil Nadu. The state assembly, driven by strong regional feelings, passed a bill saying they wanted to be exempt from the national eligibility cum entrance test for medical admissions. But instead of giving the bill the green light, the governor decided to reserve it for the president to consider.
So basically, the governor hit pause on a bill that was passed by the state's elected representatives and kicked the decision up to the president. That must have caused some serious tension in Tamil Nadu.
Oh, for sure. The state government argued that it was a matter of state autonomy. They felt they had the right to decide how medical admission should be handled within their own borders. They felt that NEET, being a national exam, put students from Tamil Nadu at a disadvantage. A lot of people saw the governor's move as trying to undermine the state's authority and force the center's will on them.
So it turned into a power struggle between the state and the center, with the governor caught in the middle, trying to keep everyone happy. It's a perfect example of how the governor can become a political punching bag.
Exactly. The NEET bill controversy really highlights the complexities of federalism in India, where the lines between state and central power get blurry. And the governor's role becomes even more important in navigating those sensitive areas.
Okay, so we've talked about appointing the chief minister and reserving bills. Are there any other examples that really show how complicated the governor's role can be and how their choices can have a big impact on a state's political scene?
Well, dismissing a state government is another area where the governor's discretionary powers have been put to the test and often challenged. One case that caused a lot of buzz was the dismissal of the Uttarakhand government back in 2016. The governor said things were unstable and the government wasn't functioning properly, so they dismissed the government and imposed president's rule. It was a decision that ended up being challenged in court.
So the governor basically pulled the plug on the elected government, using their power to declare a state of emergency. That's a pretty big move, and I bet the dismissed government wasn't too happy about it.
You're right. The dismissal caused a huge uproar. The opposition parties accused the central government of using the governor to get rid of a government they didn't like for political reasons. They said the governor had gone too far and was being biased. And the fact that it went to court shows how our system has these checks and balances.
So what happened? Did the court side with the governor or overturn their decision? That sounds like a pretty important moment in figuring out the limits of the governor's power.
Well, the High Court looked at all the evidence and arguments and ended up overturning the governor's decision. They put the dismissed government back in power. They said the governor's assessment of the situation was wrong, and there wasn't enough evidence to justify imposing president's rule.
So even a decision as big as dismissing a government can be challenged and reversed by the courts. It shows that nobody, not even the governor, is above the law, and that the judiciary plays a vital role in making sure the Constitution is followed.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how the judiciary keeps the executive branch in check, making sure the governor's actions are constitutional and that they're not abusing their power. The Uttarakhand case shows that the governor's role, though important, is not unlimited. They have to operate within the boundaries of the Constitution and the law.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. We've gone from the theory of the governor's powers to real-life examples of how those powers work in the chaotic world of Indian politics. We've seen constitutional clashes, political maneuvering, and how the judiciary steps in to make sure the governor follows the rules.
It's been quite a ride, hasn't it? And the big takeaway for our listeners, especially the UPSC folks, is that the governor's role is about more than just memorizing articles and clauses in the Constitution. It's about understanding how power works, the ins and outs of federalism, and that delicate dance between state autonomy and central control.
It's about those moments of crisis and the decisions that shape events. It reminds us that the governor isn't just a figurehead. They're a key part of how our democracy functions.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. The governor's role isn't set in stone, it's constantly evolving, shaped by political realities, how the courts interpret things, and the ongoing debate about federalism in India.
So as you continue to learn about Indian governance, remember that the governor's position is a reflection of the whole political system. It shows the tensions, the complexities, and the constant search for balance in our vibrant democracy. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep those questions coming.